Michael Storm, Anarchist of Comic Books, and co-owner, hey, what's a cone? Cone-owner of Amazing Fantasies. I could use an ice cream cone right now. That sounds fantastic. Co-owner of Amazing Fantasies comic book shop here in Topeka, Kansas. And as always, I'm here putting out the new stuff for this week. And it launches with one of the greats, one of the all-time greats. This is a facsimile of Batman The Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, and of course Lynn Varley, creating one of the great all-time tales, one of the great presentations of the Batman, and using one of the best storytelling techniques anybody ever has in using the visual medium of comic books and a television. It's an entire character throughout the entirety of the story, the television, and it's in there telling part of the story as you're going along and following the Batman along. And we also get introduced to Carrie, which is one of the better iterations of a Robin other than, just a classic boy wonder. And really just, this is great because look, this is a $5 book right here, and it's a nice thick thing. It's got some size to it. It's that original first collected work, and it's only $4.99. If you try to get this original, the last time I checked, the entry level price is $50 on anything that isn't just a reader copy. And the sharper they get, the more they get, up to a couple $100 for higher graded ones. And they're doing the whole series, and this is what makes it possible for new, young readers, different readers who otherwise have never read comic books before or haven't read Batman, haven't read this classic story of The Dark Knight Returns and just don't know it. Everybody's seen this image, this homage has been homaged a million times by a million different creators, and so they're all familiar with the image, and they're almost all familiar with the story, whether they've read it or not. And you either have to buy one of those expensive collected editions of it, $40, $50 to get it, which you probably get the whole thing at that point, but still a pretty decent size investment. Whereas you're going to be $16, $20, and depending on whether or not you're on a poll and how much savings might be in there, and cost differences and between, sort of the regular and the shiny one. You gotta have the shiny one. There's a Frank Miller cover right there, really great new art from him, and there's just a Jim Lee. You can't go wrong with that. That's a great picture from inside the little tank, the Batmobile tank thing that Batman has in the storyline, and of course a blank, and that's a great blank. Come on. Blank of that cover, basically. You can play around doing different homages all day long. Martian Manhunter this is just such a great way for people to get to read something like this that they couldn't otherwise do it again. Martian Manhunter number 9, and then I have a couple of bundles of 1 through 8 as well, only $35. That's right, you read that right. And this is one of last year's great storylines, was the New History of the DC Universe. I just realized that I'm sold out of even the hardbacks, the nice hardback editions of the complete story that we had. I can probably get more if you want one. I kid you not when I say it was one of the great stories. And of course, we're talking about them framing the history, and it goes through a timeline, and it gives you all the information you need to know about what books these events happen in, what stories, what issues that they happen in, and then this is just a story. This is the Dakota incident, of course, Dakota City, and this is with Black History, perfectly timed right at the end of Black History Month, good old short month. They get Black. Okay, no, I'm not trying to go down that road. It is what it is. We should be lucky any of us get what we get. The anarchist thing. We should be lucky any of us get what we get from these governments that you guys have voted for. But that's a story for another time, and I may iterate it. In fact, I had somebody come in. That's such a great cover. I had somebody come in the store this week, a young gentleman, as it were, and recently out of high school, and he just happened to ask me what is an anarchist, because he's heard me say that about the Anarchist of Comic Books. And I told him the truth. I said, I don't know. I can't really tell you what an anarchist is. I can tell you who I am. I can tell you what anarchy means by definition. And I can tell you that there are a whole bunch of people running around who call themselves anarchists, just like Christians. There are a bunch of people running around who call themselves Christians who don't act very Christian-like. Well, in my estimation, there are a lot of people who are running around who call themselves anarchists who they don't act very anarchist-like. And so it was an interesting and fun question to get to answer. But all you need to know is I don't hate on anybody except a corrupt criminal state, and I don't even ask for sort of people to go out there and do something about it necessarily. Certainly not taking up arms against it or anything like that. I know there's this image people get. I'm sticking with this for a reason because I don't want to leave it. Just to finish my point, since I started on it, there's this image that people will get about when they hear the word anarchist. They hear the word anarchist and they picture somebody with a mask and throwing a Molotov cocktail and flipping over cop cars and things like that. And I suppose that there are anarchists who do that, but really, if you know me, you know I'm a capitalist, I'm a businessman, I'm a father, I am a comic book collector, I am not an instigator or a troublemaker. It's a philosophical question, and if you ask me about it, I'll tell you about it quite honestly anytime. So, as I was saying about the comic books, this is great. This is the Season of the Witch story continues in here in Absolute Wonder Woman, and that's the Zatanna storyline, and I guess we find out ultimately, hopefully not a spoiler for anybody who's paying attention, that Zatanna is not herself. Let's just leave it at that. Action Comics, this is another facsimile. This one's really cool because this is a great Superman story, this Action Comics number 14, because you get to see, it's true classic Superman storytelling, because you get to see Superman be strong and be bulletproof and be who he is, but you also get to see him be sort of very human, and you get to see him use his intelligence to defeat his enemies and not just his brute strength, and it's really a very cool Superman story. But also in there, as you see up there, as the top says, Action Plus with the human target. That's Christopher. Why all of a sudden did the guy's name go out of my brain? It just jumped right out of my head. But so now I have to go in here and reintroduce myself to the character, because I'm not familiar with the human target character so much as I am familiar with the name, the human target, and of course the creating. See what I'm talking about? The great little storytelling. This is perfect Superman in here. And then look at this. He uses his smarts to sort of outwit the bad guy as opposed to his strength. And it's just very classic in its storytelling. And then he goes and cleans off the lens of some satellite that's in space for somebody to help us see through it. And so Christopher Chance, I don't know why I couldn't remember that. That's the introduction of the human target. And again, what I was saying is that it's because it's Len Wein and Carmine Infantino and Dick Giordano who created this character and brought this character to life. That's what I know more so than I know any story about the character himself. But he's sort of a James Bond type character. I mean, I know a little bit about him, but it's just funny that his name jumped out of my brain right there at that instance, just the way things do. It's funny. I say stuff that's wrong all the time. I've talked about it. It just happens because I'm in full on motion, you know. I'm just going, and there's no script. I'm just doing things, pointing things out. Like I should be pointing out these Vertigo titles. They have this one's the new one, The Peril of Brutal Dark, which is really interesting, really funny, and all of these have had some really great covers. But really funny, I mean, in the sense of the sort of story that's going on there. You can see it's obviously a detective noir story, but then you see this sort of, all right, that's a little bit of a bit of an anachronism, right? It's out of time, it's out of place, and you get this sort of noir-looking detective fellow there from the 1940s versus this ancient sort of Roman helmet or whatever it is, and there's this spirit. You start out in the early 1900s, and there's this tomb or whatever, and this thing is recovered, and it's put in a box, and the best guys are on it, I'm sure, and then it pops up again in a museum in the 40s, and you get these 1940s detective noir story going for you. Lots of great stuff over here in the Marvel section, and really it's just been so good lately. I think Marvel has had to sort of step up their game to keep up with what DC, the KO, that's still up there. We still have all that KO stuff. It's available, but it is winding down. But Marvel sort of had to step up to keep up with them. And here's the big one right here, Amazing Spider-Man, Venom, Death Spiral. This thing is shaping up to be real cool. It's a big crossover, 7 issues of Spider-Man, which was 3.5 months or something like that because it's twice monthly. And then also it crosses over into a couple issues of Venom. And so your main characters are Spider-Man, Peter Parker. You have Venom, who is the all-new Venom. It's Mary Jane, and they don't like each other. And this story, they're trying to wrap up that part of that storyline. And I don't know how it all connects with Null, but we know that Hell is coming, and we know that Hela ultimately gets nullified, and she's getting a storyline that's coming up. So all this stuff is going to cross over into these stories at some point or another, because they're all continuing. This here is consistent with what's been going on in the titles for some time now, with Mary Jane and her dislike of being in Venom, and then of course Eddie Brock is in Carnage, and Carnage doesn't like Eddie Brock, and Eddie Brock wants to go back to Venom, and then you have Torment in here that wants to, I think he wants to go after Peter Parker ultimately, because he's the start of it all, right? He's the center of it all. He wants to hurt him, but it's a 9-part series, and it kicks off now. Hulk smashed everything. This has just been so much fun because it's the ramifications of the Hulk going in to the past and really destroying the future, and now he ends up in here, trapped in a black hole. Some amazing things happen to him. He faces off against Galactus. This is just great stuff. Brand new Predator, Bloodshed. This is a story jumping into the future, back for the past, into the future, back to the past again. This is Psylocke. The Ninja storyline continues. They're trying to fix the 30 years of errors that exist in the Psylocke storyline. Punisher, brand new, #1. Frank Castle is back. He's no longer under mind control. He's no longer a controlled assassin for the Hand, but he doesn't exactly know why he's back. But he is back, and we'll see where. I haven't read it yet. I just know the general plot of it, and there's some other things. Of course, Ultimates 21. So this is all wrapping up. It's almost done. Some of them are done. Spider-Man is done. They wrap that up. And it'll continue to reverberate through the rest of the Marvel Universe. Some of it will. Some of them will be around. New and Glorious X-Force, and this is all tied in. All the X stuff is tied right together right now. It's all part of the Shadows of Tomorrow. There's that Storm book. They're all tied together right now, telling some of that story. But, it's not like an official crossover thing where I think you have to read them all or you just won't get it. Kirkman's Capes continues, and I don't think any surprises here. This is exactly what it's supposed to be. Here's something that I think is just weird, and maybe it's just me. Dark Stalkers X Street Fighter Hunter Killers, #1. Lords of the Makai Part 4. I'm not sure where you do that, who comes along and says, hey, you know what, it's a great idea to have a #1 issue that's Part 4 tied into other issues that have previously been released that, nobody's come to ask me for this. Nobody's come to tell me that they have to have this. This is the only reason this sells is somebody goes, ooh, Street Fighter, or ooh, Darkstalkers. I've played those video games. What are they doing on the same page together? It's really weird the way some of these publishers do things. And then some of them just get away with slapping a Mark Spears cover on it and selling it to me because, well, the write-up on it sounded interesting. I haven't read it yet, but there may or may not be a copy for you here if you know what it's about when you get here tomorrow. Phantom of the Opera, no surprises there. Just a great way to tell it. Beautiful art. Just a good way for this. This is part of something that was interesting, I guess, maybe in this. So here you have this Dave Stevens conceived story, and the Rocketeer, Foundation or whatever. It's owned by a trust. I guess it's a trust. Because I guess the creator is no longer alive, Dave Stevens, because he was created so many years ago. But the Rocketeer still enjoys these stories, and I guess this story is conceived. This one says the Rocketeer. It doesn't have the name of the island. There you go. That's it. There's a couple of different covers here, and apparently it's a story that was conceived by Dave Stevens before, and maybe didn't get printed because there's a Popeye the Sailor Man kind of character that was in the story as well, and with the recent it's become a public property. That's what I started to say about the Universal monsters and the presentation of some of these monsters and the way they've appeared and the way Mark Spears has been doing a lot of the monster stuff is because they've become public property. They're public domain properties now. Nobody owns them anymore, and maybe that was why this. It's just speculation on my part, just neat to think about. But it looks like a fun story, and that's the more important part. They continue to do some of these facsimiles of the G.I. Joe storyline, now with the Skybound label on it instead of the Marvel label, but this is the original Marvel, 1982, number 2. Great storyline. So I hope they keep doing it. They've jumped ahead, and they've done a few others. They did the Silent issue, number 21, and then they did 26 here, which is the origin of Snake Eyes and the origin of the relationship between him and Storm Shadow, and then they did this one here just a couple weeks back, and this is Serpentor, the first appearance of Serpentor from the original Marvel series. And so I hope they keep doing this. I was never a big fan of it, but I do remember it fond. I was a Transformers guy, so of course I've been loving that I want them to do this with the Transformers instead of the G.I. Joe. I wish they'd get around to doing that. All my copies of the UK Transformers gone. I may still be able to order it. You got to get on the poll if you want these things. You could win this. This is really cool. 1 in 25. KO number 1, which is now that the Trinity, that's the Trinity there, right? But the Trinity, the absolute Trinity, is officially a part of the DC universe now. This is technically their first appearance because you see their legs in one of the scenes. And that's just the silliness of collectors and comic books. And I don't know, anything more to note. Random comic book just laying there, but it's a very cool one. Oh, I did set up this the other day to try to get some of these cooler, oversized magazines out, including the current ones. That's the current issue of Heavy Metal. This was a limited edition 2000 AD collection from 2000 AD for the magazine, the comic book anthology magazine, like Sword of Conan, Savage Sword of Conan, vintage Fritz the Cat. This one isn't vintage. This is a facsimile, a reprint of that. And this is Heavy Metal. What more can I say? Just more stuff. We're just always trying to put out something new for you guys. There's always something new to see. This just came into the store today. Very cool. It's the whole folder. Everything comes together. It's a dynamic forces thing. There's 5 different signed comic books, a signed card. It's all the die-cut covers from the Return of Superman. It's all really great. And just one of many, many wonderful things that you can find here at Amazing Fantasies. Do me a favor. Give that click, that like a click, or blast it with your optic blaster, whatever it is you have to do to get it to recognize you and to let us know that you're out there. And as always, these wonderful, fantastic, life-affirming, creative works called comic books may or may not be here when you get here tomorrow.